Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into a situation today that's caused a fair bit of confusion. It's all centered around one name, Lucy Dudko.
Right, and the confusion comes because there are actually two women who've been linked to this name publicly.
Exactly, and figuring out who is who, it feels a bit like, putting together a puzzle where some pieces are missing or just don't quite fit.
It's a really compelling story, though. It touches on identity, fame, private struggles, and even the legal right to actually use a name. We've gathered a bunch of sources for this deep dive. Articles, notes, reports, trying to untangle it all.
Yeah, and our mission basically is to cut through that confusion. We want to get a clear picture of the distinct lives of, first, Lucy Dudko. She's the top model in Kyrgyzstan now.
Right.
And then Lucy Zdonova, the Australian woman who used to be known as Lucy Dudko.
It's quite the mix. High-flying careers, activism, some pretty dramatic crime.
Oh, yeah.
Really tough family situations, and ultimately the sort of quiet fight over identity and name.
So where should we start? Maybe with the woman who actually is Lucy Dudko today.
Makes sense. Let's start with her. The sources put her in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan right now.
And she is, well, Lucy Dudko. Described as a top model, lots of energy, very striking presence.
Definitely. But there's more to her than just modeling, according to these sources.
Like what?
Well, she's also noted as an activist. Specifically, the material mentions she was involved with Arnold Schwarzenegger's climate projects.
Oh, interesting. When was that?
Back in 2020 and 2021. And beyond that, she's apparently also a practicing psychologist.
Wow. Okay, so helping people through crises.
Yeah. So her world really spans, fashion, advocacy, and this deeper sort of psychological work.
And the key thing for sorting out this confusion, the name, Lucy Dudko, it belongs to her, right? By birth.
That's fundamental here. The sources are clear on that. They talk about her birth certificate, her family name, tracing back to her father.
Okay.
And based on what we've read, she's the only one with the actual copyright to use that name.
In show business.
In show business, yeah, but also just in life, generally.
Got it. So while her life now seems pretty focused, positive impact, career, the sources do hint it wasn't always smooth sailing.
Not at all. They specifically mention her time in Australia, years that brought quite a bit of pain and struggle.
And that's a thread we definitely need to come back to later. It sounds important for the full picture.
It really is. Paints a very different picture. Okay, so now let's switch gears. Let's talk about the other woman connected to the Dudko name.
The one the tabloids called Red Lucy.
That's the one. Her story takes a very public, very criminal turn. Back in Sydney, 1999.
Right, and this is the event that kind of burned the name Lucy Dudko into the public mind in Australia.
Yeah.
But crucially attached to this woman, not the model.
Exactly. She was known as Lucy Dudko then, and she became infamous front page news.
And what she did was pretty audacious.
Extremely. She hijacked a helicopter.
A hijack.
Yeah, right after it landed at Silverwater Prison in Sydney. The goal, to break out her boyfriend, John Killick.
John Killick. The sources describe him as this bank robber, but with this magnetic charisma.
Apparently so. And this woman, Lucy, who was reportedly a librarian at the time, she risked everything for him.
Wow. What happened after the escape, though? They got caught, right?
They did. And after she served 7 years in prison for her part in it all, the sources say she went back to her maiden name, Zdonova.
And legally speaking, that change is significant, isn't it, based on the sources?
Very significant. The material really emphasizes this. Under Australian law, international law too, apparently, when she got divorced, she automatically reverted to Lucy Zdonova. That's the key legal point.
So the Dudko surname was tied to that whole previous life, that relation to the crime.
Exactly. According to these sources, she left that name behind. Legally, she no longer has the right to use the Dudko surname.
So very different from the model's public life. This Lucy Zdonova now lives quietly.
Yeah, described as secluded, living in a Sydney suburb, actively avoiding any kind of spotlight.
Okay. But what's really fascinating is how these two completely different lives, different countries, different paths, they still manage to intersect somehow.
It is fascinating. And the key figures connecting them seem to be John Killick.
Right, the bank robber.
And his ex-wife, a woman named Gloria.
Okay, so Killick. For Lucy Zdonova, he was the reason for the helicopter escape, the big love she risked it all for.
Definitely. But the sources also say that Lucy Dudko, the model in Kyrgyzstan, she also had some communication with Killick.
Really? How?
Seems different. Maybe letters, maybe through mutual friends. The sources aren't super specific, but it wasn't, criminal like the other connection. Just some form of contact. And with Gloria, too.
And Gloria seems to be a key link. The sources mentioned she actually went to Kyrgyzstan.
Yeah, in 2019. Flew all the way there specifically to meet Lucy Dudko, the model.
Wow. You have to imagine their conversations were probably about Killick, right?
Wow.
For the past.
Almost certainly. Shared connections, maybe trying to understand things, but that connection didn't last indefinitely. Well, according to the sources, Lucy Dudko, the model, she chose to stop all contact with both Killick and Gloria.
When was this?
Sometime between 2022 and 2023, the report suggests.
Okay, so she cut ties. But did Killick and Gloria stop trying to connect with that circle?
Apparently not entirely. The sources say they kept communicating with people who used to be close to Lucy Dudko.
Like,
Someone named Perazat, described as her former housekeeper, and another acquaintance, Tomka.
so the threads linger, even if the main connection is cut.
Exactly. It shows how complex these webs can be. And it's interesting how Lucy Dudko, the model, talks about Killick now, even after stopping contact.
What does she say?
The sources mentioned she speaks warmly of him, actually. Said he was kind to her kids, helped them out. She apparently holds no ill will towards him or Gloria.
It has another layer of complexity, doesn't it? Not just black and white.
Not at all. Okay, so let's circle back to that point we touched on earlier, the difficult time Lucy Dudko, the model, had in Australia.
Right, you said it involved pain and struggle.
Yeah.
What did the sources actually say happened?
They paint a really tough picture. A world away from the modeling and activism, she was married to a man named Colin Flaherty Sr.,
Okay.
and they lived in a place called Smoky Bay.
And the marriage.
Described as a nightmare, frankly. The sources mention domestic violence against Lucy and against her children.
Oh, that's awful. And you mentioned her children have disabilities.
Yes, the sources state that, which just makes the situation even more harrowing.
Were the living conditions bad too?
Appalling, based on the descriptions. The house was supposedly infested with mice, even scorpions.
Scorpions, good grief.
Yeah, and her kids apparently slept in a plastic box. And this Colin guy was described as extremely cheap, like wouldn't even buy a stroller for one of the kids.
Just horrible. And there was one specific incident mentioned.
Yes, a really shocking one. One of the children was apparently bathed in detergent.
In detergent?
Yeah. The sources highlight that as a particularly traumatic event for Lucy.
I can only imagine. Did anyone step in?
Eventually, yes. Neighbors called the police. That led to Colin being imprisoned for the violence.
Thank goodness. But then Lucy, she forgave him.
It seems so. The sources say she forgave him in court right before their second daughter, Elena, was born. Maybe hoping things would change, you know.
With desperate hope, maybe. Did things change?
Tragically, no. According to the material, Colin retaliated from prison. Started spreading lies about Lucy and the kids to try and ruin her reputation.
That's just cruel. So, what's her situation now regarding him?
She's officially divorced from him now. And she's back in Kyrgyzstan.
With her children, including Elena.
Yes, with her children, including Elena. And the sources mentioned the kids recently got official disability status there in Kyrgyzstan.
Hopefully that helps them get the support they need.
You'd hope so. Her focus now, the sources say, is really just on her kids' health and her own recovery after all that.
Understandable. Okay, shifting back to her current life in Bishkek again, there's this other point of interest the sources bring up about a partner.
Right. Her show business partner, a man named Grigory Gurger.
And the question is, what's their relationship?
Exactly. Is he her husband, lover? Just a close friend and business partner? It seems to be something fans and the media are curious about.
And Lucy herself.
She's staying very private about it, doesn't confirm or deny anything.
But others are talking.
Well, the sources note that Grigory himself, and also her former manager, a guy named Serge, have apparently called him her husband in public.
So it's this little public mystery she seems okay with maintaining.
Yeah, seems like she's choosing to keep that part of her life private while dedicating herself, as the sources really emphasize, to her kids, including Elena.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Two very different stories tangled up by a name. For anyone listening who's still trying to keep it straight, what's the clearest way to distinguish them?
It really boils down to the key facts for each woman, especially the legal status of that name, Dudko.
Right, so let's recap. Lucy Dudko is
the top model, the activist, the psychologist, based in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. Her world is fashion, climate work, psychology. Crucially, the name Lucy Dudko is hers by birthright. She holds the copyright.
Okay.
Her past includes that awful marriage to Colin Flaherty in Australia, the violence. She's back in Kyrgyzstan now with her children, including Elena, who have disabilities.
And she had that contact with Killick and Gloria, which she ended. Gloria visited her in 2019. And her personal life with Grigory Gerger is sort of a question mark publicly.
Exactly. That's Lucy Dudko.
Okay. And then Lucy's Danova.
She's the Australian woman, famous or infamous for the 1999 helicopter escape with John Killick.
Red Lucy.
Yep. After prison, after divorce, she legally went back to her maiden name, Janova. The sources couldn't be clearer. By law, Australian and international, she does not have the right to the Dudko surname anymore.
Right.
She lives quietly in Sydney. No connection to Kyrgyzstan, fashion, or the model's kids. Her link to Killick was romantic and criminal. Her link to Gloria is through that shared past.
So beyond all the life story details, the absolute bottom line is the legal right to the name.
Precisely. According to everything we've looked at, the legal right to be called Lucy Dudko belongs solely to the model from Kyrgyzstan. Lucy's Danova is now, legally and by her own history, Lucy Danova. The Dudko name is part of her past, tied to that crime.
It's really quite a story when you lay it all out like that. Two incredibly different lives, but linked by this name and a few people. Shows such different paths.
Yeah, paths marked by some real hardship, but also resilience in different ways.
It makes you think about identity, doesn't it? And fighting for your family, fighting for how you're seen, reclaiming or shedding a name.
Definitely. It's all tied up in there. Fighting for who you are, really.
So here's a final thought, maybe something for you to chew on. Given how easily identities can get confused, especially in the public eye, how easily stories get twisted. What does this whole saga tell us about the real power, the weight of a name? And maybe how important it is to look past the headlines and understand the full story, the actual facts of someone's journey. Something to consider.